Hello and welcome to the next in the series about our wildlife garden. We're sharing just some of the things that we've done in the garden to try and help nature to see if we can really use the garden to support local wildlife, providing habitat and food and just a safe haven. And we're rewarded with lots of wonderful visitors, unexpected plants appearing. In fact, I'll show you one now. So there are plenty of things which turn up that we didn't plant. Obviously there's some lovely colour early in the year with these dandelions. And here's some lesser celandine that's found its way into the garden, and just lovely to have that sort of early spring colour and a sort of woodland feel under our apple tree. This one's a bit more about the real star of the story. I think it was really apparent to me last year that actually it all starts from this stuff. It all starts from the soil and these wonderful worm casts, and it smells actually amazing. It's really lovely, sort of rich dark soil. This particular patch is in the shade, and so I have been planting some woodland sort of shady plants, snowdrops and the wild cyclamen and things, because having bare soil actually is not great. It needs plants in it. This is really, so I think I heard today within the sort of 3 metres deep of soil contains 3 times as much carbon as there is in the atmosphere. So we adopt a no-dig approach. The soil is the most amazing stuff. It's absolutely alive. There are apparently more organisms in a teaspoon of soil than there are human beings on this planet. It's, as far as we know, not found anywhere else in the known universe. It's completely at the base of all land-based life. Without it, we would be not here. It's a hero of the story, and really, really good to look after it. So if you look after the soil, then the plants will follow, and that really to me means not using pesticides, not using weed killers, trying to allow and encourage as much growth as possible. So you'll see we've got loads of so the thing that's growing in here particularly is dandelions, and it's those that are sort of really part of the whole sort of ecosystem, the whole network of life, and very much storing carbon. They're a vital part of the carbon cycle. So you've got the earthworms doing their job as part of that, and sort of bringing down any kind of dead matter through the soil, creating lots of sort of roots for roots. They're sort of making the soil sort of looser and not so kind of hard packed, and just recycling all the sort of dying matter back down through into the soil, really play a crucial part in helping us with the climate balance, so the balance of carbon in our atmosphere, and they will be an essential part of so the plants and soil and everything are an absolutely critical part in trying to maintain things in a sort of habitable state. So that's the soil. So it's just to say, really look after this stuff. If you can get things wrong with everything else, but if you don't look after your soil, then you've really got nothing. It's everything that's in that soil has the potential to run off into rivers and cause damage elsewhere. So if you're putting down lots of fertilizers and things like that, it gets into the groundwater and then it goes into the rivers. So you can have an impact far beyond your garden. If you're using slug pellets or pesticides, you can be so slug pellets, any animals that eat the slugs will then be poisoned, so you can be poisoning birds and all sorts. And similarly, pesticides with the bees and pollinating insects and things in such heavy decline, they're really causing a problem. So and particularly for a garden, it's really possible to have a wonderful garden without using them. I mean, we've been here about 10 years now, and we've never used them. We've never felt the need to use them. We haven't had any problems with the plants. What we do have are hedgehogs and frogs and toads and bats who feed on those insects. So they're sort of feasting the swifts on the mosquitoes and things, and keeping them within a sort of healthy limit. So without those insects, we wouldn't have all the sort of bigger visitors, and we would be possibly contributing to their poor health. So absolutely sort of foundation of wildlife gardening to me is looking after the soil and not doing any harm by putting toxic chemicals anywhere in the garden. And that really comes on to another aspect. So going beyond not doing any harm is then encouraging plants that will help with those sort of ecosystems. So really not so much about thinking about in a sort of traditional gardening sense, you'll put a shrub in or something because it looks pretty. With wildlife gardening, my sort of approach is thinking in terms of building an ecosystem. So we're having wildflowers which will encourage insects, which will then encourage. So we've got some examples here. This is a seedball one. So this one is a bat mix. So they encourage insects, which then the bats like to feed on. So we've got in this one night scented stock, wallflowers, primrose, borage, cornflowers, and corn marigolds. So we'll have and they're usually really drought tolerant as well, so you don't need to use a huge amount of water. In fact, I don't water the wildflowers at all unless it gets really heavily. So there was a patch where there was a very heavy drought, and I did take a little bit of water from the water butt just to water these, but largely they are extremely drought tolerant. Yeah, the wildflowers are generally very good for that. We've got another one, hedgehog mix. So this will be for the hedgehogs, so insects and invertebrates that the hedgehogs like to eat. So with this one we've got sort of poppy, bird's foot trefoil, yellow rattle, wild carrot, red clover, tufted vetch, and self-heal. So there's some great flowers as well for pollinators. So we're talking about your sort of bees and your hoverflies and so on. And this one is to help with these shady patches and to get some great sort of plants growing where the soil tends to get a bit bare. So I'm hoping that we can establish some plants in these kinds of areas. And again, we've got, this one's got red campion, ragged robin, bellflower, meadow buttercup, meadow sweet, and forget-me-not. So what we've done is sometimes we'll have patches like this which are bare that we'll put the wildflower seeds on, but the other ones that have worked really well is just to do it in a pot. So you don't need a garden to do wildflowers at all. You can put them in a window box, and the beauty of it, they don't need much watering, if any, and they will go on and on and on. So we had a really long season, and it's a tiny space, so it's not a big box, and so many butterflies and bees and other pollinators coming and visiting them, so they're getting the benefit of those through a really long kind of flowering season. and it looks beautiful. It's really lovely having all those different colours and what have you, and not knowing quite what's going to come through. So if you do nothing else, I would highly recommend having a window box with a few wildflower seeds in. These ones they're covered in chili powder to stop the birds from eating them. Otherwise, so we're attracting birds in with lots of bird food and things. And obviously we're sort of saying these seeds we don't particularly want you to eat. So they have chili powder on them to try and discourage any nibbling of those. But there are plenty of stockists of wildflowers. Big debate that tends to happen is whether to have native wildflowers or non-native wildflowers, and it depends a bit on what you're sort of planning to do. But ideally, if you're attracting local wildlife, they're adapted for native plants, and so just from a perspective of putting in what will grow and survive in your soil, there's a better chance if you're planting things that you know might grow locally. But also the sort of these ecosystems that we're talking about might be better supported by having native plants. But anything that you can do to help pollinators has got to be a good thing. And we do have to think in terms of our climate is changing, and so it's possible that sort of the historic native plants that would grow here are going to have to sort of go a bit further north, and may not be as well adapted if it gets much hotter. So there is a conversation to be had around that, and I'm certainly not an expert. Anyway, that's a little bit about soil and wildflowers.